So of course it is 2 o'clock on the day before NaNoWriMo starts and I'm finally outlining my novel. I am so much closer to finishing this book than I thought. So we came up with some drama and I'm really excited to ruin my characters' lives. Hi guys, welcome to another writing vlog. I'm back to hopefully start a more consistent writing routine because we're almost at November. I think today is October 28th, so we're coming up really close to NaNoWriMo. I'm not really doing anything particular for NaNoWriMo. I don't think that I will be able to write 50,000 words in a month, and that's just because I think the most that I've ever written in a month was about 30,000 words anyway, and that was back when I used to write very, very quickly. But with that said, I would love to take NaNoWriMo as an opportunity to develop a writing habit. So I'm hoping to take November as an opportunity to perhaps get closer to finishing my novel, Seventh Virtue. I don't think I'm actually going to get anywhere close to finishing this book because right now it's over 100,000 words and I'm not even at the midpoint. Pretty sure this book is gonna be like 200,000 words. So how is Seventh Virtue going? It is going kind of good. We have gotten to a pretty exciting point in the book, but with the exciting point in the book came some dilemmas on where I wanted to take the book. It's not that I didn't have ideas, it's just that I had an overabundance of ideas and directions that I could go to. So I was talking to my critique partner, who's my sister Sarah, and we brainstormed, oh my god, so much yesterday. So we came up with some drama yesterday and I'm really excited to ruin my characters' lives. 2 nights ago, I didn't have enough time to write, so I gave myself the opportunity, however, to reread my work. I reread the last couple of scenes that I had written and I was so happy with them. Honestly, I even read some of the earlier book and I was happy with it too. And it was just so nice to be in a position where I can look at Seventh Virtue, which started out as a just for fun project. So I didn't think I was going to take this project seriously. But now that I am able to look back on the manuscript and be like, this is really good, it makes me excited even for scenes that I was writing, even though like I knew it, like I wasn't planning on making this a good book. It's still really good to me. And that's just so exciting to be in that position with my writing. I've been doing a lot of reading this year as well, and I wanted to have a quick chat about writing with your inner child in mind. I used to really love books. Like a lot of 12 and 13-year-olds who didn't really have many friends, I was really obsessed with fictional worlds. I had a rotation of several trilogies because that was what was in fashion at the time that I was a big reader that I would rotate through. Quickly after that, I kind of fell out of love with reading when I was a teenager. Recently, I've been doing a reread of one of my favorite books from when I was, I think, 12. It's from the very popular series, the Graceling series by Kristen Cashore. While I love Graceling, I love the 3rd book in that series more, and I actually think there are more books now, which is news to me, and I'm very excited about it. But I love the 3rd book, which is, I think, the sequel, or like it's like a companion, Bitter Blues, the best book ever. If you are a literary fiction writer who wants to read fantasy, but you're bad at reading fantasy, huge recommend, because that book is just like literary as hell. Like nothing happens. It's very slow. It's like my favorite kind of genre book where the emphasis is on the characters and their relationships and sort of subplots occur around them. And it's a really great meditative book. I love it. It's one of my most read books, and it reminded me of how powerful writing for your inner child can be, which is a conversation that I've been thinking about. Rereading it has really illuminated to me how much writing things for your enjoyment of like your younger self can actually make a difference in your writing process. Now, I started writing when I was 12, and I've had tons and tons of crises on the channel where I'm like, oh, writing's not as fun as when I was a 12-year-old. I think what was funny is I didn't realize that the way to make me feel better and to be excited about writing as I was when I was that age was to simply write very similarly to the way that I wrote when I was that age, where I was writing with characters in a certain genre, when they're in a certain relationship, when they're actually together and not so separated from each other and having separate stories. I actually really enjoyed writing them as a team, and I have a bit of an ensemble cast, right? And so it's kind of fun to write them together. They do better when they're together. But for a long while, there were several characters that I hadn't written with for many years. As many of you will know, the characters I was writing with the most were Lonan and Harrison. They took up a lot of my time. Like the last 3 years, I've just been writing solely with them. Foster, Reeve, Darren, all of them kind of fell under the radar. I totally forgot, honestly, how to write with them. And the prospect of writing with them again was scary and honestly immobilizing. I often couldn't even write with them if I wanted to because I didn't remember how to write them anymore. If you started writing as a pretty young person, like I was 12 and now you're older, I'm 21 now, it's been literally almost 10 years, which is crazy. It's interesting to kind of look back and see that you can still reconnect with the writer you once were while also engaging with the skills that you know now. Because if the 12-year-old I was when I started writing looked at the work that I'm producing right now, oh my God, she would be so excited. I was reading Seventh Virtue the other day, like I said, and I couldn't help but think little Rachel would have loved this. It is exactly everything that she loves in a book. And I think after spending, I don't know, the beginning of October, late September, feeling really, really insecure about my writing, it was just a really nice thing to feel, like a positive thing to feel. So the first thing that I need to do today is like reorganize this giant brain dump of notes that I created. I'm not very particular when it comes to taking notes, especially when me and Sarah are doing random brainstorming conversations. I'm really just transcribing as much as possible so that I can come make sense of it later. So yesterday we talked for like, I don't know, an hour and a half, and I have 697 words on my laptop because I originally was taking them on my phone, realized that I could not type fast enough on my phone and switched to my computer. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to log into iCloud, and then I have my notes. I take a lot of my notes for Seventh Virtue on my phone. So I have not updated the Seventh Virtue notes in a long time, like on my computer. Usually they just sit on my phone and then it takes me 10 years to actually move them to my computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very quickly copy and paste the notes from iCloud into my Word document. Another thing you can do to reconnect with the teenager or child that you once were is listening to the music that you used to listen to when you were that age. So I have been listening to, like, on and off, I've been listening to some artists that were really important to me when I was like 15, 14, whatever. So I've been listening to a lot of Current Joys lately, which if you watch my old vlogs, just watch the old vlogs. That's all I have to say. I'm gonna listen to some of that right now while I transfer my notes. I've been really valuing the last couple of days, putting my enjoyment first. I've just seen the difference in my work when I love it versus when I am thinking that I have to write it because this is what I should be writing. It's just astronomical. Hey everyone, so it's the next day and I didn't honestly do very much writing yesterday. So here's a quick update. I did manage to go through the notes that I was taking. I revised them to make them make a lot more sense. And then because by the time I finished that, I was like too tired to write, I decided to write a very quick plan for what I wanted to do for the scene. So in total, that was a 160 word paragraph that I wrote just giving me instructions for the next day so that I'm aware of what I need to do. I don't often give myself notes for like what I need to write next, but sometimes for things like this that are very important, I just want to be able to get it right on the first go. I also revised a little bit of Seventh Virtue yesterday. I have honestly not been revising it a ton because I don't really care to revise it right now. There was something I just wanted to add in because I realized when we were doing the brainstorming the day before, I had come up with like this idea that would need me to mention this thing earlier. So I did, and now it feels nice. I'm like, oh, it's all clicking into place, even though I had no idea actually what I was doing before that point, and I just made it up and then went back and fixed it. So I wrote like, I don't know, maybe 500 or 400 words. The manuscript itself, over 100,000 words. It's at 101,000 words, almost at 102K right now, which is pretty awesome. This notes document is 15,000 words, which is fantastic. I think it's good. It has a lot of thinking in it and there are a lot of ideas. So even if I'm stuck, there is always a place to kind of turn to. The longest notes document I think I've ever had was 40 or 60,000 words. I have been making playlists for my book and I've been going a bit overboard. It has been my hyperfixation for the last 2 days. So I'm just giving myself the time to do it. So I decided to make 3 playlists. I just finished the other one. So they are a Harrison playlist, a Reeve playlist, and then a playlist for them both, like a best friend playlist. I am still using iTunes. I don't know if that is archaic. I don't stream my music, I buy my music. I still have iTunes. So what I have to do is I have to like manually put them into Spotify. I'll put the link in the description. The Harrison one is like 9 hours now. I was trying to whittle it down to like 12 songs. It's 149 songs, so that didn't work out. And then I have a Reeve playlist, which is 51 songs, so much more manageable at 3 hours and 42 minutes. I just wanted playlists like for songs that remind me of the characters. So not ones that like are relevant to the book in any capacity, because I do have a Seventh Virtue playlist, which is quite literally 395 songs. One day is how iTunes calculates the duration of it. But I wanted to create playlists that like solely remind me of the characters themselves, and the songs are very relevant. So I'm curating them as much as possible. And yes, for Harrison, there were 149 songs that remind me of him, I guess. So I was so happy I just finished the best friend one, which is the best because I love their energy. I'm writing with a lot more Reeve, actually. Her point of view has started to become a lot more relevant because, funnily enough, this book wasn't supposed to be dual point of view, and it's not really dual point of view, but it kind of is becoming dual point of view because I keep writing more and more scenes in Reeve's perspective, and so she's becoming, you know, even more important. It's always been Harrison and Reeve's story. Funnily, when I started Seventh Virtue, I thought it was Harrison and Lona's story. Like, the last 4 million fostered books have been Harrison and Lona's story, but it's not. It's Harrison and Reeve's story. So it was nice to create a little, like, a love letter for their friendship. Right now, I am going to do something that is completely irrelevant to Seventh Virtue. I have had a whole bunch of stories coming out in magazines, and if you didn't know, I publish a lot of work, so I will link my link tree where you can read my work, but I have a ton of them coming out at the end of the year, and I need to proof one of them. So I got the final pages back. It looks absolutely beautiful. It's for my short story, Joanne, I'll Pray For You, which was like the first short story I'd ever written, ever, really. It's gonna be in print and an anthology. It's like, oh, it's not my first anthology, it's my second anthology, but it's the first time my fiction has been anthologized, which is really exciting. Hi guys, so an update on this vlog. I had a really great writing day yesterday after pretty much avoiding writing for quite some time. It wasn't that I was consciously avoiding writing, maybe a little bit, maybe a little. I spent the weekend mostly making playlists, and I realize now that that was actually a very viable thing to do for Preptober because, I mean, music is really, particularly, I think the more genre my work gets, the more useful music is in the writing process. So I was happy that I created them, and you can listen to them because I put them on Spotify. But now that that's over, I realized, okay, I gotta write. So I ended up drafting about 2,500 words last night across 3 writing sprints. So I'm feeling pretty good about Seventh Virtue right now. Today is Halloween, so NaNoWriMo is tomorrow, which means I only want to do a couple of things. Really, I want to focus on creating some momentum in the draft. I feel like, you know, I have quite a bit to write because there's at least like a 10,000 word kind of mini subplot that I know what is going to happen. I mean, it's not really a subplot because it's just one event, but I know it's going to like be a bit of like a large occurrence in the book. So I know that I'll have quite some time to do that during NaNoWriMo, but otherwise I'm like, I don't really have set scenes in place, and obviously, I work better without outlining. I mean, I've been writing for 10 years, and the process that works best for me is the one where I don't outline very much. I am feeling a bit uncertain going into NaNoWriMo. Like, if I don't have any ideas, I feel like I'm going to be afraid and, like, not write because I'm afraid. Suffice to say, I did have a great writing night last night. It only took me about an hour to write all those words, which is great progress for me because it shows me that I can do the NaNoWriMo word count that I want to do because I have been doing like 2,500, 3,000, 3,500 word days every time I write Seventh Virtue. I just kind of need to set my mind to it, especially since I'm planning on writing an hour every single morning. I want to show you something fun though that I made in terms of like my final Preptober stuff. So the playlist is one thing. Now I want to show you a calendar that I made to track my word count. And this is what I see every day when I sit at my desk. Piece of art that I made in an art therapy class. This calendar, which I actually have when I'm at home. I'd bring it back and forth with me. Ruth Spear, who's like a really fantastic artist. Seventh Virtue art that Sarah made me. Cannibal art of Will. This is what I wanted to show you. The NaNoWriMo calendar. So you can see I kind of made it fancy. The print isn't the best, like you can barely see the bird, but I will like pop up the cover of Seventh Virtue right next to this. I went into Canva because Canva is honestly the best when it comes to templates, and I just used one of their templates and I customized it and wrote down the word count I need to be at every day. One thing that I struggled with in camp when I was doing my outlining goal, which was just an hourly goal for NaNoWriMo, is that, you know, I wasn't sure for like the first week where I needed to be. So eventually I had to create like an ugly lovely little spreadsheet showing me where I was at in terms of the hours. So I decided to make a calendar. I used to make these calendars when I was like much younger to participate in NaNoWriMo because they were like really fun, and I would always do like the fun little background. So I made one for 7th Virtue. I put the little 7th Virtue logo, and it's cute. So the scenes I wrote yesterday were really fun. I wrote them in Reeve's perspective. Again, 7th Virtue never had multiple points of view. It was just Harrison's point of view when I first started it in May of 2021. But pretty quickly, I think like maybe a month or so into writing 7th Virtue, I had started writing some point of view chapters in Reeve's head because she and Harrison are the main characters of this book. Like, it's their story pretty much, like of them learning to become friends again because they've been estranged for the last couple of years, and also their shared goal of saving Lonan's life because Lonan is Reeve's brother and Harrison's ex. Reeve's power, because this is fantasy, they have magic, it's fun. One of them includes kind of she can project her memories onto other people. So we had a couple point of view chapters in her head that were her projecting her experiences, her memories, whatever, onto Harrison. So I think chapter 6 has like a giant chunk of Reeve in it. And then, I mean, at least I think maybe 15,000 or 20,000 words of this book is in her perspective. So I only recently started actually solely writing Reeve point of view chapters that didn't include transitioning from Harrison's voice into hers. So these ones are literally just Reeve chapters, and I've been really enjoying them because something interesting happened yesterday where I was writing a scene between Reeve and Harrison. It's a bit of like an emotional scene, some emotional stuff. It's been wild. Like, we've had a lot of wild things happening. There's this really quite fantastic moment where Reeve is trying to comfort Harrison because he is crying. I was telling my sister, who is my critique partner, that it was funny because Harrison cries a lot in his point of view. You know, he's a crier. He cries a lot. It's fine. It's me too. But what was interesting is writing him from Reeve's perspective because I was able to kind of see a different side to him. I've been writing Harrison's point of view for a really long time with just like him, like experiencing the world. You know, I started with Mothwork in 2019. And I mean, before then I was writing some short stories in his point of view in 2018. So I've been writing just solely in Harrison's voice for what, 18, 19, 20, 4 years, right? It's been like a long time. So it was interesting to actually write from his experiences, but from somebody else's point of view and see what that does. And I noticed that he was just like, he was a lot smaller than I have expected him to be. Innocent and a little bit young, like a lot younger than I had like experienced him in his point of view. Like, and I would never have seen it if it wasn't in Reeve's point of view, which if you're new to the channel, most of the books are in Reeve's point of view. So Fostered, which, I mean, I always link the How I Accidentally Wrote a 10-Book Series video because this is just the easiest way to explain it to everybody. But most of the books in the early series that 7th Virtue is a spin-off of, they were all in Reeve's point of view. This is how they started the story, was in her head. The first 6 books are in her head. So it was like, I think 600,000 words or like something like that of the series is in Reeve's head. So of course I spent a lot of time analyzing the experiences of others in her point of view, but because it's been a while and now they're like adults, I think actually going back to that where I'm in her head has been really lovely. I've really been enjoying writing her as this older person. I think she's 23 or 24 in 7th Virtue, but it's interesting to see how like they're navigating their early 20s versus when I was writing them when they were navigating their like teens, like mid to late teens. So it's been fun. I'm going to start my day with a sprint. I say that I'm going to start my day and it's quite literally almost 12 o'clock. So I'm going to do a couple of sprints because I'm just feeling excited and it's good to get on top of the words. You know, this is why I want to start with writing in the morning, because then if I start with writing in the morning, the rest of my life is recontextualized and I'm like, I just want to write. I don't even care about anything else, which is kind of great for me. Okay, so of course it is 2 o'clock on the day before NaNoWriMo starts and I'm finally outlining my novel. I had decided that it probably made the most sense to get my thoughts in order because sometimes 7th Virtue overwhelms me. Like, I'm kind of overwhelmed right now. So I've done a little bit of work, which has helped with the overwhelm, but then I'm going to do more for the rest of the day. So I'm not sure if I'll actually draft today or if I'm just going to put like my eggs in the basket of just like outlining the book. Now, I don't want to fully outline everything. I mean, I've talked about this extensively. It just doesn't, you know, it's not going to work for me, but I would like to have an idea of things that, you know, I still need to happen, ideas that I want to write that I kind of just got sporadically. So what I did is I have a scene list that I created for Camp NaNoWriMo. I have an entire video on everything I did. So if you want to learn more about that, I will link it. But the scene list essentially it just comprises of one sentence descriptions of ideas that I personally had already gotten. Now, the scene list was quite long. It was like 2 pages long, pretty much, like nearly 2 full pages, single-spaced bullet points. That would have been around, like, let's say 40 scenes, and just having them all in one giant list was, yeah, too overwhelming for me. So what I've just done is I have gone in and I've made some headings. So the headings are based off of large sort of subplots. They're not necessarily, you know, big enough to be called subplots, but just big things that happen in the book, and I've bolded those as headings. For example, there's a ball in Seventh Virtue. I guess ball is like a fancy term for it, but you know what? It's fancy, so we'll call it a ball. And I have a heading called Before the Ball. That currently has like 6 scenes that I want to write on that. Then I have a heading for the actual ball, and that has 2 scenes that I want to occur. And obviously those aren't the only 2 scenes that will occur. I'm not doing a detailed outline. I'm just taking the ideas I already have and organizing them. And again, these are things that I've already written down in my scene list. I'm just organizing it so I can like look at it and be a little bit more clear as to, you know, what ideas I already have for what subplots and what I need to still do more brainstorming for. I have just been following Michelle Schusterman's How to Outline Your Book Fast 5-step book plotting method. I'm watching her video right now. Michelle makes really fantastic videos. If you don't already watch her channel, she has a really great video on basically how to outline, and one of the steps is to write like a 5 sentence summary of the project. I hadn't thought to do that, and I think it would just be helpful, honestly, to have Seventh Virtue compressed. Obviously, I already know the characters, I know their situation, I have a log line, but I don't have like a 5-sentence summary, which I think she says is the setup is 1 sentence, end of act 1 is another sentence, midpoint twist is the next sentence, which end of act 2 into act 3 is the 4th sentence, and then 5 is the climax and the end. So I just want to do that because I was also thinking Seventh Virtue is really, really long. I think it's around 104,000 words right now. So like the longest book I've written, I think, since 2017. I was wondering if I already wrote the midpoint, because you know how I've been saying in my vlogs, I haven't written the midpoint. Maybe I have written the midpoint and like I could just end this book a lot earlier. But at the same time, there are events that I want to happen specifically in Seventh Virtue. That might take the book to ungodly lengths, but you know, whatever. If I end up randomly finishing this book very quickly, you will know that is just because I decided to actually choose a different thing as a midpoint. What I've planned to be the midpoint has not occurred yet, which is kind of crazy because the book is so long. Okay, updates. I have a Red Bull because I'm tired and it's not even 6 o'clock yet. But basically I had a bit of a realization while I was doing like the 5-sentence summary that Michelle Schusterman has in her video, which by the way, is a really fantastic video. I found especially that 5-sentence summary to be useful. But what it mostly illuminated to me was I had to write out, you know, the midpoint. And for a really long time, I didn't think that I had written the midpoint. Well, pretty much something changed while I was writing, and this is really normal for pantsers, but something kind of shifted where an event that was supposed to happen, it just happened earlier and in a different way than I thought it was going to be. So essentially, I thought I hadn't written a midpoint, but because I'd moved that event, it basically was the midpoint. Now, granted, that didn't happen until around like 90,000 words in the novel, so I mean, it's still a long way off, but I was getting a bit confused because I was like, I haven't written, you know, what I thought was going to be the midpoint was basically this ball. Everything that I thought was going to be the midpoint is now the climax of the book, which means I am so much closer to finishing this book than I thought, which is kind of terrifying, to be honest. I have been writing Seventh Virtue since 2021, May of 2021, and it's been a book that has meant a lot to me. It's also a book that I didn't think I was going to finish. I had started Seventh Virtue kind of just as a fun little thing. If you didn't know and didn't catch the How I Wrote 10,000 Words in a Day vlog, which I basically talk about the conception of this project, you can literally see me create this project out of thin air on that day. I was super inspired after watching Shadow and Bone because, like, who doesn't love Shadow and Bone? I love it. And I just loved the setting. I loved the magic, and I thought it was really, really interesting. And that inspired me to write Seventh Virtue. And eventually I watched Cursed, which is on Netflix too, which is also inspiration for Seventh Virtue. So I wanted to write my own fantasy version of Fostered, and I had already come up with a loose idea for Fantasy Fostered at least I think 2 years before. And I'd actually worked on the concept of it in 2019 a little bit more. So initial conception 2018, worked on fleshing out the idea in 2019. Never thought I would write genre fiction ever again because I was in my literary fiction phase. So I was like, I'm never going to write that. And then by the time 2021 comes around, I'm like, let me draft this. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to do this for fun. I'm probably never going to finish this book. Lo and behold, it's become my main project. And I mean, it's going to be a series. I already have a book 2 planned. That's what I'm getting to at this point. So I've been drafting it for a long time. And it's been with me since Feeding Habits, and Feeding Habits was such like a disaster of a book to write that it's just been a really nice project to kind of constantly have. And now I'm almost done, which is kind of interesting to me because I didn't think that, you know, I would be here because I thought I hadn't even written the midpoint. I thought this book was going to be 200,000 words long. But I mean, I have a lot of words left to go, but probably not as long of a time in this project that I thought. Because, you know, this Peterson subplot ended up turning into this gigantic thing that I didn't think it was going to be. But I've been writing with the Petersons at the Peterson estate for over a year now. So it's been like a lot of development, a lot of Darren, a lot of Reeve, a lot of sussing out what their relationship is. And so I'm like coming to the end, which is kind of freaky. And also I'm like, I wonder if I'm even going to be able to write 50,000 words in November, because will I have already finished Seventh Virtue, you know, by the time 30 or 40,000 words rolls around? We'll find out. I'm a student technically, so I should do my schoolwork, but I really don't want to. So I'm going to instead do Seventh Virtue stuff so I can kind of clear it out of my system so that tomorrow I can start NaNoWriMo kind of strong. Of course, I'm trying to do every morning. I had a fantastic conversation with my critique partner sort of about my worries and my concerns about sort of what I was planning on doing, which is basically turning the midpoint into the end of the book. And we figured out a whole bunch of stuff. So I took like 6 or 7 separate notes on my phone, like writing out different ideas. So I'm going to go make sense of those. Then I am going to just continue to like organize scenes. Again, I'm not really a chapter by chapter outliner. It's because my chapters can just stray so much, but I'd really like to, you know, by this point I want these things done, kind of mini outline before tomorrow. Okay, so it's about an hour later and I've been going through the book and specifically my notes because I know I have a lot of notes and ideas, and so I just wanted to like copy and paste relevant information underneath like those headings that I was talking about. Like, you know how I was talking about like a heading for climax and a heading for the ball. Like, I'm just pasting relevant notes underneath there just because those are scenes that I'm going to be writing, and it'd be great to know that I didn't leave out a whole bunch of information that I'd already come up with like a couple of months ago. I've made quite a bit of progress on the document. I'm on page 15 of 27. It's not taking very long, honestly. There are some scenes I already wrote, and I color code my documents. So scenes that I've already written, I just color code the text red, and then I color code ideas that I'm no longer going to use because that crops up ever so often with purple, and then any sort of like backstory or things that are important for me to kind of revisit, I will color code in blue so that I'm aware that they're not done. And if the idea hasn't been used, it's just black text. And for me, that's just the easiest thing to like look at my notes really quick and be like, okay, I already used that idea. I don't need to look at it right now. I had a really good writing session last night, but I was feeling similar to how I am right now, like a little bit destabilized. I think it might just be like me being anxious now because I'm coming toward the end of the book, which is bizarre. Like, what? I do have an idea for book 2's title already, but I think I'm gonna make a video like about it instead and make it kind of fancy. Okay, it's another hour later and good news, I am done. It was a lot of work and a little overwhelming to go through like 15,000 words of notes and be like, oh my god. If I miss things, it's fine. That's what revisions is for, which I'm really excited to actually edit Seventh Virtue because I haven't edited like an actual novel in like a long time. So I'm just excited to go through and like make structural changes. I already have a document where I make notes of things that I want to make changes of, just because I'm not going to go back and make those changes if I don't have to. So I created a very quick and dirty what needs to happen now list. And basically I did that just so that I could very like at a glance, I get overwhelmed with a lot of information and it confuses me to see like a lot of words or a lot of bullet points. So what I found easiest was just to take the information that I had written down in terms of like scene ideas and like those headings and condense them into as quick as possible bullet points that I could reference when I'm like, wait, what is happening? Like, what's the sequence of events? So I've plotted the rest of this book all through the rest of it, like till the end. And obviously I don't have every single scene in there, but that's fine. I just wanted an idea because, like I said, I'm much closer to the end than I thought. So to summarize the entire end of the book, really it is only going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullet points to finish this book, which is great. Now, that's probably going to be a lot of words and a lot of work and a lot of chapters, but it's only 7 bullet points, which is great to know because now I have like a target that I can aim toward, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited about it. I'm just also excited for book 2 and also to print out Seventh Virtue and just have a physical copy of it. Oh my god, it's going to be so exciting. That is probably going to be the last of my Preptober, to be honest. I'm just going to leave it at this now. Prep is done. I've got the playlists, I've got the calendar, I've got my notes sorted out, and I've gotten the rest of the book pretty much plotted out, which is not something I thought I would have done because, like I said, with the midpoint originally where it was, I had a lot left. But now that the midpoint is a different scene and what I'd planned is now the climax, the end of the book kind of fills out kind of naturally, which is really great. Even I make like structure mistakes sometimes too, and I'm happy it was able to kind of sort it out, and also that it gives me a really strong foundation to jump off of for book 2. So I'm going to just draft for the rest of the night so I have some direction tomorrow. But yeah, whew, the prep is done. I'm so excited.